Hi, I'm Larry Hudson. Welcome to the Zero E Michigan podcast. I'm flipping roles with Carl this month because I brought a buddy on, Dave. We met several years back at a level 2 charger with our Chevy Volts. He has a Gen 2, Gen 1. My co host, Carl, and we'll let you introduce yourself, Dave.
Yeah, as Larry said, I'm Dave. Bought a second gen Chevy Volt late summer of 2016. It's a 2017, and I got it because I thought this is like we didn't have we both had my wife and I both had Subarus. We've had Subarus since 1989, so 33 years we had Subarus. Now we're all electric, but I thought this is the perfect way to dip your toe into electric, especially because the Gen 2 had like 50% more battery capacity than the Gen 1. Um, and so like 90, I think 95, 96% of my 75,000 miles or so have been all electric. I average 6 to 8 gallons a year now of gasoline. Have to
Hi.
change the oil every other year.
Yeah.
Even according to the oil life monitor, it says, yep, you can keep going. So yeah, and it's been perfect for us. And then March of 22, finally convinced the wife, and so we traded in our last Subaru, our eighth one, and we got her a 22 Kia EV6, and she loves it. So
And that's the all-wheel
that's
drive. You wanted the all-wheel drive.
we did get so that was her one. She's like, because like I said, we've had Subarus for over 3 decades, and she's like, it has to be all-wheel drive. I'm like, okay, that's. She's like, but the Bolt doesn't have all-wheel drive. I'm like, no, there's plenty that do. So, yeah, that was her one thing, and she sort of had range anxiety, even just thinking about an electric car. And the one thing that just sort of pushed her over the edge, I said, because she hated getting gas. There were only two where she used to work. There were only two gas stations on her commute, and they were both in slightly dicey neighborhoods. And I said, you'd never have to get gas again. And she's like, oh yeah, I guess we can go look at them. And yeah, now she loves it. She's like, oh, in the heat, it heats up so quickly. It heats up instantly. Yeah, there's all sorts of unknown bonuses.
So for those not familiar, Volt V as in Victor.
Yes.
So that's the plug-in hybrid,
Yeah.
as opposed to the B Bravo Bolt, which is the
Yeah.
the pure EV.
Yeah, whoever
And
chose those two names didn't think it through. They're too similar
Well,
sounding.
you
They're
know
both
what?
good names, but they're too
I
similar
I
sounding.
think if you think about it, look at that. Carl just had to spend a few minutes
Yeah, talking about
doing
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
I think just about every week I have to do that. I have to go Volt,
yeah.
V, and so I think actually it was a clever
Okay,
mark. They're getting a lot more traction,
okay.
but
and
it's
it,
annoying. It's annoying for sure. Now,
and
Carl, you have a Kia, right?
I have a Kia, but not the EV6. I have a Kia Niro,
Okay.
and
Yep.
so the Niro is based on a platform that they have both three
Mhm.
variants. They have the hybrid, so non-plug-in hybrid, just a standard hybrid, so put gas in it. They have a plug-in hybrid, um, similar to the Volt, and then they have the pure EV, and I have the EV. So it's not a bespoke EV platform,
Right.
whereas the EV6 that Dave has is the GMP platform, which was designed
EGMP.
to
Yep.
purely eGMP. Thank you.
Hmm.
Designed purely to be an electric
Yep. The same platform as the Ionic 5.
and
Yep.
Ionic
And
6.
and
I
now
saw
the
an
Ionic
Ionic
6.
6 yesterday in Lansing. I was at the
And
Capital City Market charging my Zero motorcycle, and behind me was an Ionic
nice,
6. It's really sleek.
nice.
Looks like a little jelly
Yeah,
bean.
yeah.
Yeah, those are good looking, really good looking, and it seems like they're well built cars. Everybody's happy. I haven't heard anybody complaining about their Kias.
We really like, so like I said, we've had it since March of 22. It's it's been great. I mean, I sort of had this expectation of, even easier to maintain than my Volt, and yep, it's been that. She's had two flats, but that's not the car's fault. She had two nails in like about 4 weeks, but that's not the car's fault. So
So any regrets coming from leaving the Subarus behind? And by the way, I had a legacy wagon
Mhm,
years ago,
mhm.
and then I had a kind of a tricked out WRX.
Okay,
Wow.
And
so we had
yeah,
our fifth or sixth, I can't remember. We had 8 total for over the 33-year period. We had 8 Subarus. We had a 5th gen Legacy GT, which is the same drivetrain as the WRX, but nobody knows it's a hot rod, so nobody's trying to race you with a
sleeper.
streetlight.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you don't look at the hood and there's just that slight little intake on the hood, it looks like it's a Legacy. And if people don't know cars that much, they're like, "Oh, what is that? A Camry? You know, they an Accord?" And but yeah, and so I also tuned it a little, had it turned up the horsepower a little bit. Had just enough torque to turn all 4 wheels on dry pavement. So we miss that car. We also had an Outback sedan; those were pretty rare. That we I don't miss. I don't miss the gasoline. I don't miss all the oil changes for sure. I don't miss any of that. Um, I guess I almost could say we missed the known reliability, but that's just because we're not familiar with Kia. That's not Kia's fault. So no, I was a little sad to see. So I even had to turn in my sash, if you will. I was a Subaru ambassador for years. Actually, I think I'm wearing a Subaru ambassador T-shirt. Um, and of course, you have to own one to be an ambassador. And so I had to email them and say, "Hey, I have to quit." Um, and I guess I sort of missed the Subaru family, if you will. There's a Subaru meetup group here, a bunch of great guys, but they were just falling so far behind in the electric market, and they're sort of, trying to ride Toyota's tailcoat, but Toyota is even, sort of going along kicking and screaming. They've got the one BZ4X, I guess they're calling
Right.
it. I
And
think
then the
that's what it's
Subaru
called,
has
the Subaru
the same
Solterra.
variant, the Solterra.
Yeah, and
I've seen
that's
a few
it.
around, but yeah.
I'm not even sure if I would know one if I saw one. Um, so I miss the Subaru family, I guess, but do not miss the maintenance and all the spending on the gas. Just putting $50 in every week or couple weeks, or depending on your commute. Just what am I doing?
Yeah.
Don't miss any of that.
Well, I'm happy to tell you that there is an EV community, and I don't know
I am
if you've
finding that. Yep.
plugged into that, pun intended.
Only met Larry and a couple others.
Okay, so you're in the Kalamazoo area?
I am.
Okay,
I work right in Kalamazoo, and about 2 years ago, we moved from Plainwell to Kalamazoo.
okay. So then I'm sure you're familiar with Paul Pancella. He's a professor at
Is the
Western.
i3, or he had an
Um,
i3?
no, he's
No.
also been Chevy, a Volt and a Bolt.
Paul.
He
Oh, I'm
built
thinking of
his,
a guy named Ben. So no, I don't know a
yeah,
Paul.
okay. So he's a good person to know. He organizes events in the Kalamazoo area,
Mhm.
started Kiva, Kalamazoo EV Association, and then he and I kind of merged our activities. I live in Muskegon,
Okay.
so we have the West Michigan chapter of the Electric Auto Association, and we try to do events. There's a Facebook group. I'll put links to all that in the show notes. Um, but for example, this week coming up in Muskegon, we have an EV driver social. So we're going to Sociable, which is it's a Pigeon Hill facility, and it's there's not much EV. We're not doing an EV show or anything. It's just people show up and talk EV and just
Yeah.
hang out. But then there are other opportunities with National Drive Electric Week. So if you want to bring your vehicle out,
Yeah, we've got
that's
an
that's
event
coming
here, I
up.
think, this Saturday in
Yep.
Kalamazoo.
Yep.
Is it?
And and I apologize. I should be a better ambassador, reaching out to Dave, keeping him in a loop. We did talk, like, he doesn't do Facebook, social media, right,
Yeah,
Dave?
I dropped Facebook
Mhm.
several years ago. Yeah.
What were you recommending that you would like to see us advertising on?
Oh, well, not. I'm new to it, so I don't know how much traction you'd get. Mastodon is when X, Twitter, the company formerly known as Twitter, when that started taking a nosedive, there's a bunch of people going to Mastodon, which is an open platform, so nobody can own it. Um, it's just a different social media. It's sort of a mix of it's kind of like Twitter, kind of, and it's free. So
Have you heard of that,
But
Carl?
I've heard of it, and I'm a Facebook person. And I have to say
Facebook's huge.
it's huge. And I've thought about dropping Facebook after seeing the social dilemma, and all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But if you know that, and you use it for what it's good at, in
Mhm.
my case, it's groups.
Mhm.
I'm a member of a couple of EV groups, and started the West Michigan EV enthusiast group, and we're now 800 some members. And so I think it's very
Nice.
effective for that.
Mhm. Yep,
So you
it
just
is.
have to take everything else with a grain of
Yep.
salt.
Yep.
So that's always the struggle. How do we reach people? Some people are only on email, so then you're maintaining email lists and
Mhm. Mhm.
that sort of thing. So yeah, we can certainly look into that.
Yeah.
And that's even if you're a joiner or somebody that likes groups, right? Some people just want to have their car and drive it and not be bothered with
Mhm.
by any of this other stuff. Although you mentioned the camaraderie, and
Yeah.
I know this from, I used to have a Volkswagen camper van. So we had a group that
Okay.
got
Yep.
together, and we went camping, and we joked that between us we had enough parts to build another bus, because there's always something going wrong. And by the way, fun fact, a lot of the Vanagon folks, the water cooled, sort of third generation,
Mhm.
depending on how you count, camper vans, they used a lot of Subaru motors, because
Oh,
the motors that were in
laid out the
the water
same.
boxers it's the same layout, the
Mhm.
kind of pancake
Mhm.
4-cylinder. And so you see a few of those running around.
Nice.
um One of the things I wanted to hit on is, you mentioned all-wheel drive and Subaru.
Mhm.
So what's the background for that? Is that for driving in snow? Do you do any off-roading? Do you do camping? Like,
No,
what's
no,
your what?
just driving around and trying to survive in Michigan. And it's been less and less of an issue generally, although last winter we had two pretty good dumps of snow, but it was just the snow. So I bought my first Subaru in '89 and was just blown away by the difference in traction. And then we had another Subaru and then another one. And then when I'd just somewhere around then, I don't remember when, I think Bridgestone might have been the first dedicated winter tire, not not snow, what we used to call snow tires. That was just a more aggressive tread, and that was the only difference. They had come out with, sure, it's a different tread, but it's also a different tire compound. Um, the Blizzak was the Bridgestone one, and now they all the tire manufacturers make them. And actually, Nokian, that's all they make, because they're in Finland and Russia, and that's all they
Mhm.
drive on. Uh, I have Nokians on my Volt actually in the winter. And so in 2010, when we got our Legacy GT, that came with summer only tires, but we bought it in February, and I thought, uh, oh, okay, I guess I need another set of tires. I might as if we have summer onlys, I might as well get a set of winter onlys. So I did, and then that difference in traction was amplified even more, and I'm, oh my gosh, so I got dedicated winter tires for my Outback also. So we still use those, the difference is indescribable if you've never driven on dedicated winter tires in the winter. Even just braking. Um, there's a very steep hill here, and I'm sure Larry still remembers it, Drake Road, and I live up at the top of that hill. There was a bad ice storm last December-ish, I think, and 80% of the cars were getting a third of the way up and had to turn around. And I drove in my Volt, in my two-wheel drive Volt, since I've got the Nokians on it. I drove past a Forester and a CRV that both had to turn around, and I just kept going. So winter tires do make a difference, but all-wheel drive also makes a difference in its own way. And then the wife wanted all-wheel drive, totally understandable.
Mhm.
So that's why one of the reasons we went with the EV6.
Okay. Yeah, I had the Nokian Hakkapeliitta R3s on
I
my
got the
Leaf.
Hakkapeliitta something.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you have
they're
bonus points if
amazing.
you can spell them. You've lived through a winter now with the EV6?
Yes, we bought it in March of 22. So yep,
Okay.
we did.
And you did put winter tires on it?
We did.
Okay.
Even just for the braking,
Sure.
just all braking, steering, everything. They make just, well, you've had them, so I don't need to
Yeah.
tell you. We did. I believe they're Blizzaks. Yep.
Okay. And so good experience with that. What about ground
Yeah,
clearance?
yes. It
I mean, it's
definitely
not a
has more
Jeep,
than
we all
my
know
Volt.
that, but
Right.
still.
And we, never intend to take it off road.
Mhm.
Just getting through Michigan winters is the reason she wanted the all-wheel drive. And for that, yeah, it was great this winter. It was just couldn't really compare it side by side with the Subaru, but seemed every bit as capable as the Subarus that we had for, like I said, 33 years. So
Yep. And they're heavy vehicles, so they kind of, squat down in the snow too.
plant themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Even my Volt, weighs
Right.
probably 600 pounds more than a comparable Cruise.
Mm-hmm. And that's one
And
of the first things.
the Volt does great in the snow, doesn't it? My son
There's
had,
a
I
ground
think-
clearance issue. Like if
Oh,
it had
yeah.
more ground clearance, it would do better.
And there's
I
that
would
front
I would
skirt.
say it does okay considering its ground clearance, I would say. I wouldn't say it does great. But
So
it
I
like I
had
said,
that.
on ice, it's fine.
It's so smooth on the bottom. I was able you just have to have your speed up and you're just tobogganing across the
Yeah,
snowbank.
yeah.
But still though, the electric, it can switch back and forth so much faster than the gas. So my son had a Subaru all-wheel drive
Mhm.
with, the mud and snow tires,
Mhm.
and I had worn out tires, and I still was, he was going to school, I was going to work, and I could still pull away at the light. All his he was sliding off, when they're all spinning. And right, did you experience that with the Volt, that it is actually even superior to the Subaru?
Mm, No.
That's a hard sell,
I
Larry.
think, yeah,
Subarus
no,
are very good with their all-wheel
they
drive.
are. Our worst Subaru was a 98 Legacy automatic, and they had sort of three kind of different all-wheel
Mode?
drive systems. All-wheel drive. Like there were the automatics, there were the manuals, and we had several of those, and then the VDCs. We had an Outback VDC, which was phenomenal. And the sticks are also phenomenal. It's a 50-50 split. It's a mechanical center diff. So the Legacy, automatic Legacy, that was the worst one. Still fabulous, but the others were even better, and that's we had most of those. So yeah, hard sell on better than a Subaru. I put winter tires on them.
But I would say the EVs that have all-wheel drive, you can actually do more because now you don't have a mechanical linkage anymore.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
electronic. So
like
now
I
you
said,
can
I
spin the
didn't
front and rear. You can spin
in
the front
whatever
and rear tires
sequences
differently.
you need.
Yep.
Yeah. So the EV6 is the wife's daily driver. I didn't drive it much, but there were 2 days in our second, I think it was right around Christmas, the second dump of snow we got. I was driving it around for 2 days. Oh, it seemed every bit as capable. Yeah.
What aspects of EV driving have surprised you?
The only surprises I initially thought of were kind of negatives, but there's a positive one. Initially, as soon as I got my Volt, I thought, oh, there's a couple of free places around town I can charge. And that was surprising. And I thought, well, that's going to go away soon. Why are they giving it away forever? And Western did stop giving it away, but there's still a lot of places in town, enough places in town where it's free. And I thought that would go away, and it hasn't. And I'm so grateful it hasn't. I'm just waiting for it to, but until it does, I'll keep benefiting. So that's been one positive thing. There's a small bank in town. I think this is their northernmost branch. I think they're around your area, Three Rivers. And they had an EV charger. And I thought, well, why would you have a level 2 at a bank? How long are you at a bank? 10 minutes? You know what? Well, it's not worth plugging in. And then, but they've got a LEED certification on their building. It's a new building. What was a new building? And and part of, you need so many points of efficient. You need this kind of air conditioner, or this kind of windows, or one of the way you can get points is to have a level 2 charger. And I think that's why they put it, because why else would a bank for customers have a level 2? So I charge there a lot. And so that was one surprising thing, is that there are some places that offer it for free and still do. There were a couple of negatives I had thought of. Is when you're driving a nice vehicle, a gasoline powered vehicle, you think, oh, I get better mileage, better fuel economy on the freeway. Well, You do, but that's only because ICE vehicles are so terrible at stop and go. You actually get better mileage at a constant lower speed. And like I said, we lived in Plainwell. I worked in Kalamazoo, and I had my Volt, and I would always jump on 131 and go into work. And the range was about the EPA estimated range, 53 miles. That seemed accurate-ish enough. And there was some construction or something. I don't remember what made me. A couple days I took some of the back roads, 45, 50 miles an hour through much of it. And my range jumped a noticeable amount. And I do the experiment again, a couple days on the highway, a couple days on the back roads, a couple days on the highway, 70 plus miles an hour versus 45, 50. That made a huge difference. And it does in all cars, but you don't notice that in a gas
in an ICE car. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so terrible. It's stop and go. So you
right?
think,
Because
in the city, I get terrible mileage.
Right. And it's partially because you have the friction brakes, right? So you
and they're
you
just
expend the
wasting
energy to get
as heat.
going, and then
Yep.
you basically turn it back into heat with the brakes.
Yeah.
Whereas something like a hybrid or an EV, they're going to recover that.
Yeah.
And then on the highway, it's all about the speed and the wind resistance, right? So the
Yes,
force of wind
yes.
resistance goes up to, I believe it's the third power of speed. So
I think it's
of
the
velocity.
square. Yeah.
Okay.
So it really.
Paul would beat me for this because I should know the formula, but yeah, and it's huge. And I do the same thing on my motorcycle because surprisingly, motorcycles are not particularly
less
aerodynamic, right? Because it's got,
people aren't aerodynamic.
I'm not aerodynamic by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination. So when I go 45, 55, I can get 130, 140 miles of range on my zero. But if I hop on the highway and go 70, it plummets to like 80. So yeah, it's going to be the same thing.
And so that was a surprising thing. Didn't even consider it before. Thought, always had the mindset of freeways are better for your fuel economy. And then I learned the actual truth. So
yeah. What about maintenance? Have you had to do much maintenance? And I know Volt,
EV6
you still need to do
new,
oil
so
changes,
no.
but you mentioned some of your frequencies, but
every other year. So the almost all GMs now, I think all GMs now, and my car's not even new anymore, they have an oil life monitor. The engineers who built the engine are keeping track of all sorts of things. How much fuel have you gone through? How many cold starts? How many warm starts? How much idling? How much acceleration? All the stuff that goes into how long is your oil going to last? And so I completely trust. I work for a largest tier 1 auto supplier. I totally trust the engineers that made my engine. I'm a software engineer, and again, work in automotive field, have for many years. And according to the oil life monitor in my car, I've changed my oil every other year because I use the ICE so infrequently. So that's been great. And of course, brake maintenance is going to be when the friction material falls off the metal backing because they're not going to wear out. Yeah.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit because my Tesla Model S 2015 that I recently sold had the brakes checked before I sold them, and there was enough dirt and corrosion in there that it actually had a problem. I had a caliper that seized, and so it's my brake pads were the originals.
Right.
Okay. After 120 some thousand miles. But so one thing we need to be careful of here in the colder climates where we have snow and slush and salt and sand, if you live near the shore, that stuff does need to be cleaned out. So with the Tesla owners group, we had a brake clinic recently, and you just need to get them cleaned or clean them yourself. So you do need to do that. So there's not zero maintenance, but it's a different kind of maintenance. So
there isn't, and even Teslas and all the other electrics still have, except the Leaf, still have coolant circuits. Of course, most cars still have or now have cabin air filters, and there's the it's not a transmission, but the gear case,
the drive.
So there's oil in there. It's not zero maintenance. It's just much less. Even with the Volt, it's just been fabulous. And that's due to me using the ICE so little. If I had really long commutes or for whatever other reason used it more often, I'd have to change the oil more often, but would still have a really, really good hybrid then.
Mhm.
But
Now you made a little switch for your Volt. Tell us about that. Where
I
you could,
did.
yeah. Tell us how that
So
worked.
yeah, I bought my car in late August. I think it was August 31st of 2016. It's a 2017, and Volts had the second gen Volts have a mode called engine running due to temperature, and it would kick in at or just below 32 Fahrenheit
Right.
because they figured, well, let's run the gas engine that generates electricity, but that gives you free heat instead of needing electric heat, and they figured that's about the cutoff where the economy works out about even. And so it would cycle the ice. It would still, you're still driving electrically, but it would cycle the ice to keep the coolant temp between, I think it was like 120 and 140. Well, it doesn't know when you're finishing your trip. So one day it was doing that, and it was doing it just the way it was supposed to. It was working great. I was getting free heat. And I'm pulling into work, and I was watching the coolant temp coming down, 124. Oh, I'm almost to work. 122. No, don't come on now. Just as I'm turning into the driveway here at work, the ice comes on. Oh, that was dumb. Or, for instance, there's a couple of fast food joints literally like 2 blocks from here. And in the winter, if it's really cold, you go there for lunch in an ice vehicle. How much heat are you going to get from your engine? None. It's not going to have time to heat up. And so why would mine run? It's below 32. I'm going to run.
Right.
That's dumb.
Right.
Now you can defer it for the people that comment, you can defer it down to 15. You can, but if it's below 15, and it gets cold here sometimes, it still acts the same way, just at a lower temperature. I wanted more control. So the input to it is the ambient air temp sensor is just a thermistor behind the grill. So I substituted 2 other resistor or added 2 other resistors. So now I have like a 3-way switch. I can put it in normal. The car doesn't know anything's changed at all. It acts like it's supposed to. The other 2 switches, or the other 2 positions of the switch, are me telling the car it's above 32, even if it's not. So then I have full control. I can go to the fast food joint 2 blocks away when it's really cold and the ice won't run, because I know I'm not going to benefit at all from the ice running. So yeah, it's a little hardware hack that I felt it needed.
So you trust the engineers, but not that much.
Well, no, it's trust. It's just they can't know how long my trip's going to be.
Yeah, of course.
And that's why it does what it does. It works. If you want it to be in that mode, it does exactly what it's supposed to, and it works perfectly. But I don't want it to be in that mode because my trip is short, or I'm ending my trip. If I wanted it in that mode, I'd leave it in normal mode, and then as I'm getting near work, I'll shut it off so it doesn't run for 5 seconds while I pull into the driveway.
So it was just annoying. So same thing. I got my first Volt in 20. So I had the Gen 1. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that was the prototype that they were, promoting what the Gen 1 would look like. You could see it looked nothing like that, but boy, it was a good looking car. Anyways, that was annoying. I would run my son to school. It's like, just far enough where you didn't want to walk it on a cold day. And then it would, the generator kick in and it wouldn't do enough. And so I took the sensor, because I didn't have your expertise. I just took the sensor, ran wires, and I put the sensor in the car and just laid it on the dash. And so there's usually enough sun or that did the trick. Now,
okay.
So then on the really cold weeks where, it's below 15, then that didn't do anything. And I still didn't want it kicking on. And so I was unplugging it and having it in my pocket. And then I'd get down in the morning. And so then I'd have to have the plugs hanging out of the window, because if you started the car without that plug, it would throw a hard code.
Yeah.
And and it would freak out because they didn't have a temperature sensor. So anyways, I also, so for many years, but it turned out just laying it on the dash took care of it like 99% of the time.
Okay.
So
yeah, sounds like we need a separate episode just on Volt hacks.
Yeah. I think Carl, just what I know of you, you would have, if you had a Volt, you went all in on all electric right out of the gate. But if you had a Volt, you would have, you would totally get what we're talking about. You would have done something.
Yeah, no, I get.
I posted my hack on the Volt forums. I think it's just called the Chevy. I can't remember the URL, but I titled it, "Hey, some crazy guy hacked his new Volt."
Oh, nice.
I posted all the part numbers and like the connectors. I wanted them. I didn't want electrical tape, and I didn't, because it's right behind the grill. It's outside. I didn't want salt and corrosion, so I actually looked up the OE, because I can't hear it work. So I looked up the OE connector numbers, got OE connectors. I just plugged my system into one end into the wiring harness and one end into the original sensor. So if or when I sell the vehicle, I can unplug my thing, plug it back together the way it was, and it's exactly the same.
Please send it to me, and I'll include it in the show notes. You don't have to do it right this second.
That brings me to the final thing, was where Dave and I met at Celebration Cinema Charge, and it was free. And so my accountant was within walking distance, my bank was within walking distance. So I was up there once a week, and I would go there. Nobody was using them except for Dave and I.
Yeah. I sit for a living. I said, I'm a software engineer. So when I got the car and I discovered all these free chargers, and they're level 2, and the Volt, 16 amps, so not real fast. Mm-hmm. So I'd have a couple hours to kill. So I'd walk around. I'm like, oh, this is actually good exercise, instead of, because I don't work out, don't go to a gym, but now I walk a lot, and I've been doing that for 7 years now. It's great.
Yeah.
It's ironic that my car makes me walk, but I walk more, I get free charging, get to meet people like Larry.
Dave, I wanted to ask you, so now you have a Volt, and those aren't going to last forever. I keep telling my daughter that. She loves her 2015 Volt. And I told her, you need to start saving for the next car. And she said she's, early 20s. She hasn't had to do this. Why? I have a car. It's like, well, one of these days something's going to happen where it's going to be really expensive to fix. So now you have your Kia EV6. So if your Volt died today, and you had to go out on the market and what's out there today, what is the car that you would likely consider to replace your Volt?
Yeah, I think I have two answers. The one answer is, and it changes because new vehicles come out. We briefly talked about the Ioniq 6. And so my one answer is whatever the best-ish in our price range seems to be at the time. And currently that looks like the Ioniq 6 to me for our uses. My other answer would be, again, depending on how I feel when my car dies. Like I keep telling this, what would I do if my car exploded today? What would I do? Oh, maybe I think 2019, I think, was the last.
Yeah, don't say exploded. That happens to ICE cars, not to EVs.
Well, got smashed. What if my Volt got smashed?
I'm just teasing.
And maybe a real gently used 2019 Volt. But no, I think the real answer would be whatever the current best for our price range vehicle is, and currently I think that looks like the Ioniq 6.
Okay.
Briefly looked at the Mach-E before we moved, and then had to put things off a little bit because of the move. And then in that time, the EV6 came out, and those are comparable cars. I would probably look at the Mach-E again, but yeah, currently I think the range on the lower trim level Ioniq 6, I think just due to the narrower tires, is noticeable. I think it's 360 miles,
and they're more aerodynamic as well.
And that's why, yeah,
because it's the same platform.
Yep, exact same battery, same motors. Yep. So currently it would be the Ioniq 6.
And then Carl, that's funny. We should do it. Volt. There are quite a few places now that are doing that for $2,500. The battery refurb on the Gen 1 Volts.
Okay.
So I think there's a place in Canada and a place in Texas and one other I can't remember, but there's quite a few people stepping up, and I think Transport Evolve, they constantly talk about, I think they have a Gen 1 in their family somehow, maybe one of the workers, and they have had an issue with it. I can't remember what came out, but right, these secondary, just like we did with gas cars, right? Look at all the Subi guys, you know, 400,000 miles, you know, all these trick stuff to do. So I think that's coming, right?
I think we are starting to see more EV and hybrid friendly shops popping up. So
Yeah.
you know, we had a show recently at Irvine's in Grand Rapids, and they do hybrid and EV battery rebuilds depending on the models.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
Here in Spring Lake, we have Lakeshore hybrid. So I think it's starting to come.
mhm.
And the nice thing for owners is that you're not necessarily looking at a whole battery replacement, because that's one of those myths that we always hear. Well, you're going to have this really expensive battery you got to replace. Well, the reality looks more like if you can find a competent shop that can pull your pack apart and find out which one's the bad cells and pop some new cells
Right.
in there,
Right.
they can typically, for the price of the labor and a couple of cells, they can do it much, much cheaper than a brand new battery pack. And then you're back on the road, you know, with
Yeah.
decent range and an operable car.
Wow, that's good information right there. I didn't realize they were doing that right there in Muskegon, huh?
Well, I don't know exactly the extent of their offerings, but again, we were at Irvine's. They're in Grand Rapids, and they build themselves as a hybrid and EV shop. And I talked to the owner recently, and they said, yeah, we do some of these replacements, but some of them are harder than others.
Sure.
So it's not a promise. And I do remember, I think there was something special about the Volt. Some of the Volt aftermarket or OEM parts are difficult to get, and sometimes
Mm.
stupidly priced.
Mhm.
So, you know, you might have to go find one at a junkyard. But yeah, there's a whole right to repair. That's again, a whole other discussion. That's something we'd
Yep.
love to
It is.
see happen in the EV space.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so this doesn't go too much longer. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave, for
Appreciate
sharing
your
Hey,
your
you're
input.
welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And to our listeners, we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.